Many Syrian refugees come to the densely packed buildings of the Jordanian capital, Amman, seeking refuge from the bloody civil war raging in their own country. Jordan has long been a destination for those escaping violence in neighboring countries. Over the years, Palestinians and Iraqis have flocked here. Now it's mainly Syrians who are coming. An estimated 750,000 of them. Around 2/3 live outside refugee camps, many of them in Amman. Hospitality is part of Jordanian culture, but the refugees are a topic of discussion. We must take them, she says. Where else can they go? Every country has good people and bad, so they're welcome here, but, well, some are nice and some aren't. The refugees have caused all sorts of problems, says this man, from traffic to housing, and everything's more expensive. We want to find out what challenges are facing Syrian refugees and their Jordanian hosts. There are strong cultural and economic ties between the two countries. Many Syrians have emigrated to Jordan in the past. They've invested in local companies and started their own businesses. But not every Syrian refugee can count on help from relatives who live in Jordan. Finding a job isn't easy, and work permits are hard to come by. This is Marka, Amman's industrial quarter. We've heard that many Syrians work here. The owner of this workshop is willing to talk to us. He knows the problems that Syrian workers have and the effect they have on the job market. Jordanian law forbids Syrians from working unless they have a permit, he says. But even so, some businesses have let Jordanians go and hire Syrians. They're willing to work for less money. They're desperate and they need the work. That has an influence on the market. He too employs Syrian workers, and not just because they're cheaper. There's a big difference, he says. Syrians like to work. Jordanians often aren't hard workers, but Syrians are different. They're efficient, and above all, they're reliable. This young Syrian worked as a mechanic before coming to Jordan. He's employed here too, even though he doesn't have a work permit. Not everyone would allow it, he says. But my boss took me on, and I have a job, even though it's against the law. The young man's journey to Amman wasn't easy. He spent months living in the Zatari refugee camp near the northern border. A relative had to pay for him to be released. Now he's finally found work. It's the same story for many Syrian refugees. Coming to Jordan means coming to the Zatari camp. We travel there to meet some of them. Around 100,000 people live here in the middle of the desert. For more than a year, this UN-run refugee camp has been the first destination for Syrians who managed to make the dangerous journey across the border. In the middle of the camp is a bakery. Ibrahim and his family fled here from Daraa a year ago. They owned a bakery back in Syria. When we arrived, there was nothing but pre-prepared food here, says Ibrahim. There was no bread, nothing to buy. My brother said I should start baking again. We had to smuggle in the equipment and the cooking gas. It was dangerous. We worked out of a tent when we started. We sold flatbread and falafel. Now the market has developed and we run this bakery. The business is going well. The earnings are enough to support 9 families. But it's not easy. In order to get flour and other ingredients, Ibrahim has to rely on Jordanian suppliers and officials. His brother-in-law Suhir is frustrated with the situation. Everyone wants bribes, he says. The UN people, the Jordanian military, everyone. The whole family works in the bakery, even the children. They haven't been going to school for the past 2 years. Despite the difficulties, the family is proud to have carved out a niche. But it's still hard for Ibrahim to contemplate the future. I have no idea, he says. I don't really think about going back to Syria. It's hard. There's no hope. The bakery is just one of many shops that have opened on the main street of the refugee camp. It seems that many here are not counting on going back to Syria soon. But not everyone is happy to stay. Many want to start new lives outside the camp. We travel a few kilometers to the border town of Mafraq. Until a year ago, the town had 70,000 residents. Now there are 120,000. Abir Ikhal Hussein and her family belong to the large group of refugees who have chosen to seek security here. The family used to live in the Zatari camp. Abir still misses her old home in Homs. Our old home was different, she says. Imagine. Our kitchen was tiled. The apartment had windows and wooden doors. It had louvered blinds. It was nicer than this. She says there's still lots of cleaning to do. The apartment is simple but not cheap. Rents have quadrupled in the past year. The family has to pay the equivalent of 190 euros per month. Apartments are scarce because of the crisis. The cost puts strain on Abir's family, especially since her husband isn't working. The family of 6 can't afford to spend much on food. They get basics from the United Nations. They've managed to get mattresses and a TV. Besides practical problems, they're still coming to terms with the horrors of the war. 2 days before we left, he says, a lot of planes came and bombed the mosque. They came and went. And then they fired rockets. And lots of people died. Then he tells us his grandfather was killed by a sniper. As always, it's the children who suffer most from the trauma of war. They get some relief by going to school. Every afternoon, Ahmed and his siblings attend a private school set up by the charity Caritas. Many Jordanian schools are now teaching in the morning and afternoon to accommodate the Syrian children. The children have to get used to having regular lessons again, the teachers say. Lots of them have missed months of school because of the conflict. This teacher tells us that the children were loud and unruly when they first arrived. They were scared and traumatized, she says. Now they like the school, and when we finish in the evening, they don't want to stop learning. No one knows how long these refugees will have to endure their exile in Jordan. Many have decided to build new lives here. We set off back to Amman. There we meet with Bayan al-Adawi, a Syrian activist who helped found a women's initiative called Syrian Kitchen. The members meet discreetly in an out-of-the-way house. They're careful not to attract too much attention because many still have family in Syria. In the kitchen, the women bake and cook Syrian specialties. The refugees would like to set up a catering service for Jordanian clients. They say they're ready to start new lives. They should feel as though they're members of society, says Bayan. They don't want to just wait for help to be given to them. The Syrian Kitchen Project helps the women, and they realize the work they do is worthwhile. We've had a great response, especially from our customers. The project is still in its early phases. The women already have a few Jordanian customers. They rely on word of mouth. Everyone here is worried about the future and about their families back in Syria. That's another reason they don't want their faces shown. My relatives are spread all over, says this woman, in Egypt, Turkey, Lebanon, and here. My family is torn apart. It's unbelievable that Bashar al-Assad is still in power. After the bloodbath, after all the deaths, how can he live with himself? And how can he still be ruling Syria? Despite the difficulties faced by the refugees, life goes on. How long they'll be away from their homeland is impossible to tell. But until they can return, many Syrians will be staying in their adopted country, Jordan.